Hello learners, I welcome you to this MOOC on Population and Society. In the last video, we discussed the key demographic features of Indian population. This is the second video of this week, and in this video we shall be discussing the module 18, which is on educational scenario of Indian population. In this module, we will understand the importance of education and its impact on population with a specific reference to our own country, India. Studies have long recognized the importance of education and how it strongly relates to the demographic behavior, be it fertility, mortality, or migration. Education has received special importance because it has seen the transition from high to low fertility observed in societies which achieved mass education. Although there are numerous other studies which have established these links between population, education, and development, these interactions have not always been given the same emphasis in the policy discourse, and they also tend to vary from one country to another. In this module, therefore, we take a brief account of the education and literary programs in our country and also assess the current educational scenario in terms of indicators like literacy, and also discuss the sources of information from which we can get an idea of the educational scenario. This module intends to fulfill the following objectives. We'll be studying the education and its importance in demography and development context. We'll be providing a theoretical background. Secondly, we'll be talking about the major commissions and policies in India since independence. We'll be discussing the educational statistics system in India. And lastly, we'll be talking about the educational status of the Indian population over the years, as well as discuss the disparity that is observed amongst different population segments based on sex, religion, caste, etc. So starting the course, we will talk about the importance of education in demography. An individual's level of education influences choice of work, employment, age at marriage, adoption of family planning, health and hygiene practices, etc. These largely influence the demographic trends and patterns of a country in terms of fertility, mortality, migration, which again directly impacts the population structure, composition, and distribution. Population structure and composition also has an impact on formation of human capital, education spending, and economic growth, which are very relevant for a country's development. For example, a population with an age structure with a larger young population would mean increased educational spending for a country. On the other hand, a country with a larger educated and skilled workforce will inevitably result in more and more economic growth. This has its foundation in the human capital theory. Human capital usually refers to the stock of knowledge, skills, and other personal attributes that people possess that enable them to be more productive. Therefore, investing in human capital is considered very crucial for a country's growth. Under the human capital theory, education is viewed as an optimal investment choice that balances present costs and future benefits. Although pursuing education has its costs, there can be significant individual returns on education and investment on education. It has been seen that with education there is higher productivity, and with higher productivity they have an increasing probability of getting employed. Human capital theories contend that a well-educated population is a productive population and have highlighted how education improves worker productivity and efficiency. There was also a larger realization that, in addition to its purely economic impacts, education-aided progress can also lead to better health, longer life, and overall well-being of the people. The increased faith in education as an agent of change led to its place in public policies and investments, not just to reap the benefits of a productive population, but also to improve the overall well-being of the population of a country. However, it was seen that rates of return from education, whether it be in terms of economic or social outcomes, varied not only by the level of education, but also by the level of development of the countries. It was seen that primary education was the best investment for low-income countries, whereas additional investment in secondary education gave higher social gains in middle-income countries. This brings us to the next section, where we will be discussing the history of development of education and literary programs in India, and we will see what kind of policies were taken and which were the aspects of educational programs that were more highlighted, especially in our country. A significant feature of traditional Indian educational system before independence was that it excluded majority of the people. This structure was highly influenced by the rigidly hierarchical society that resulted from the caste system, and access to education was limited to only those who belonged to the upper caste and wealthy people. On the eve of independence, the importance of education in socio-economic development of a nation was strongly recognized by the leaders, and it was found that it resulted in the formation of several committees and commissions which were constituted to analyze the problems, bridge the gaps in education, and suggest the way forward. The University Education Commission 1948-49 was the first commission on education right after India's independence. Though its primary focus was on higher education, but it also addressed issues concerning school education. The commission was established under the chairmanship of Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, and it laid out the essential functions of higher education. The aim of universities was to develop individuals and make them capable of successfully carrying out national responsibility in a variety of sectors. This was followed by the national commissions, that is the Secondary Education Commission in 1952-53 and the Education Commission of 1964 and 66, which revisited the concerns of education in our country. The Education Commission of 1964-66, set under the chairmanship of Dr. D.S. Kothari, however, was the most comprehensive. This commission is also often referred to as the Kothari Commission. The commission stated that education was meant to improve production, develop social and national solidarity, solidify democracy, modernize the country, and develop social, moral, and spiritual values. Some of the most significant recommendations of Kothari Commission were free and compulsory education, using a 3-language formula for imparting education, keeping in mind the linguistic diversity of the country, promoting education amongst the marginalized population segments, that is the females, the underprivileged, lower caste, tribals, etc. These education commissions resulted in major education policies. The National Policy of Education 1968, which arose from the Kothari Commission's recommendations, were a watershed moment in the history of independent India. Its goal was to foster national progress, a sense of shared citizenship, to strengthen national integration. It emphasized the need for a comprehensive redesign of the education system to improve its quality at all levels, as well as stronger emphasis on science and technology. There was also emphasis on promotion of moral values and a tighter relationship between education and people's life. The National Education Policy of 1968 stated very concisely that strenuous efforts should be undertaken to achieve the directive principle under Article 45 of the Constitution, which seeks to offer free and compulsory education. Though the National Policy of Education 1968 was a good attempt in identifying the ways forward, it could not be properly executed in the absence of a comprehensive implementation program. So there was a formulation of National Policy of Education 1986, which was the next crucial step. The 1986 policy acknowledged the fulfillment of policy goals established by the 1968 policy, but also said that the additional financial and implementational strategies and issues need to be addressed. The encouragement of privatization and sustained emphasis on secularism and science were important legacies of this particular strategy. The National Policy of Education 1986 also concerned and called for the concerns of environmental issues. The policy included elements such as common school curriculum, minimum levels of learning, value education, the role of media and educational technology, job experience, physical education, and so on. In 1989, the government formed a committee to analyze the effectiveness of National Policy of Education 1986. And later on, they came up with another policy document known as the Programme of Action 1992. And its main emphasis was to ensure quality education by removing social, economic, regional, and gender disparities. It aimed to promote national integration, a sense of common citizenship and culture, and also inculcate values among the young minds and improve the quality of education at all levels. Later, as information and communication technology advanced, the use of ICT in education increased. The Government of India issued a policy called the National Policy on Information and Communication Technology in 2012. This was done to prepare the youth to participate creatively in the maintenance of growth of a knowledge society, which would lead to nation's overall socio-economic development and also address the issue of global competitiveness. The most recent of the national education policies is the National Education Policy 2020, which is the first education policy of the 21st century, and it attempts to address our country's numerous expanding developmental imperatives. This policy suggests revising and overhauling all areas of educational structure, including legislation and governance, and in order to develop a new system that is consistent with the aspirational aims of the 21st century education. The National Education Policy places a strong focus on development of each individual's creative potential. It is based on the notion that education must develop not only from cognitive capacities, both foundational capacities such as literacy and numeracy and higher order cognitive capacities should be developed, such as critical thinking and problem solving, which have social, ethical and cultural consequences. Now coming to the educational statistics system in India. Annual educational statistics for India were first gathered much prior to the country's independence in 1913 and 14, which were followed by quinquennial reviews, and they were collected and compiled by the Directorate of Commercial Intelligence. After independence, when the government was compelled to plan for universalization of elementary education, the Ministry of Education took up the work and they conducted the first All India educational surveys to analyze the situation and develop a plan. Information on education mainly comes from two sources: educational institutions and households. The National Council of Educational Research and Training (NCERT) conducts All India educational surveys on a regular basis to gather, consolidate and disseminate information on the country's overall progress in the field of school education. These surveys give basic inputs for developing micro and macro level educational plans, formulating educational policies, and monitoring the progress of various educational initiatives. It addresses the availability of schooling facilities in rural places, physical and educational facilities in schools, incentive schemes and beneficiaries, medium of instruction, and languages taught, enrollment, particularly of SCs and STs, girls and members of educationally backward communities. Another important source worth mentioning is the district-wise data collected annually from schools under the District Primary Education Scheme (DPEP). In 1994-95, the District Information System for Education was implemented as a part of the DPEP program. However, due to limitations such as shortage of qualified staff, lack of training facilities and coordination between different data collecting agencies, deliberate non-response and willful misreporting, delay in data collection, etc., Unified District Information on School Education (UDISE) was initiated in 2012 and 13. Since 2010 and 11, the Ministry of Education has attempted to conduct an annual web-based All India survey on higher education as well. This study includes all higher educational institutions in the country. The data is being collected on a variety of parameters, including teachers, student enrollment programs, exam outcomes, educational budget, and infrastructure. Coming to the important sources of household data on education, these are the decennial population census and the sample surveys done by the National Sample Survey Organization. Important educational data that can be collected only from the households relate to literacy, the education level of the population, whether the person or the child is attending school or not, and these kind of information cannot be obtained from the educational institutes. That is the reason why the decennial censuses is an important source of information and data on literacy and persons' attendance of school and the level of education of the population of a country. The NSSO collects data on social consumption, including social consumption on educational services. The most recent of the survey was the NSS 75th round, This survey covered both qualitative and quantitative aspects related to educational attainment of the household members. Qualitative aspects included literacy, educational level attained, type of education, nature of institution, and attendance, and reason for never enrolling. On the quantitative aspects, information was collected on expenditure incurred on education of household members. Now coming to the last section of this module, we'll be assessing the educational scenario in India. While there are many indicators to assess the various aspects of educational scenario of India, we limit our discussion to only literacy rate. Literacy is a prerequisite to education. It's an important instrument of empowerment, health awareness, and overall improvement in terms of cultural and economic well-being. In India, the general perception about literacy follows the census definition, that is, the ability to read and write any language. Illiterate people, according to the census, do not have this ability to read and write. The census defines literacy rate as the proportion of literate people in the population above 7 years of age. The decennial population census of India are a rich and credible source of information on population's literacy rates. Literacy, however, varies considerably across gender, across regions, and across social groups. We will be, therefore, understand and assess the regional variations in literacy as well as the literacy rate variations among various population subgroups based on gender, caste, using the information from the census of various rounds. It can be noted that there is a marked difference in the literacy rates for men and women. Low female literacy rates adversely impact family planning and population stabilization efforts in India. Studies have indicated that female literacy is a very strong predictor of the use of contraception among married Indian couples, even when women do not otherwise have economic independence. According to the census 2011, literacy rate for women was 16.3% lower when compared to men. However, it can be noted that there has been considerable and consistent improvements over the years. Female literacy rates have recorded consistent improvements over the years. It has been noted that female literacy rose by about 10.4% between 2001 and 2011 compared to the male literacy rate, which only rose for 7.6% in the same period. There seems to be a significant difference in the literacy rates observed in rural and urban areas as well. This can be attributed to the lack of physical infrastructure like lesser number of schools, poor connectivity, and access to education. The literacy rates in rural and urban areas have shown marked difference. Though the literacy rates have shown improvements over the years in both the rural and urban areas, we can see a marked difference between literacy rates in rural and urban areas. In rural areas, it was seen to be around 67.8%, whereas in urban areas it was 84.1%. Similarly, there has been considerable disparity in literacy rates across regions too. For example, states like Kerala is approaching universal literacy by recording 93% as per the census 2011, while states like Bihar are lagging far behind, reporting a literacy rate of 61.8% only. 6 Indian states that account for about 60% of all the illiterates in India are Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Andhra Pradesh. The states with poor literacy rates also perform poorly in terms of other development indicators like life expectancy, infant mortality rates, etc. This is suggestive of the fact that literacy is indispensable for the overall improvement of the individuals as well as development of the regions. From the table on state-wise literacy rates, we can see that there is a gap in literacy rates of females and males which is observed. However, it is the lowest in Meghalaya, which is 3.1%, and it's less than 5% in the for the states of Kerala and Mizoram. The inequalities in the literacy rate are needed to be addressed as a priority because they tend to reproduce inequality across generations. Illiterate parents are at a severe disadvantage in ensuring that their children are well educated, and thus it perpetuates more inequalities for the future generations as well. This is evident if we look at the literacy rates of the disadvantaged sections like the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Women belonging to these communities show even lower levels of literacy, as will be evident in the table. Therefore, we can conclude that though there have been considerable improvements in literacy rates over the years in India, there is still considerable scope for more improvements to address the literacy disparity that persists across regions as well as various subgroups of the population. With this, we come to the end of this module. In the next video, we will be discussing module 19, that is on Indian economy and its population. Thank you.